The apartment on the 12th floor of the Pinnacle building in the Geislum district was enveloped in the special silence of early morning, when the city had not yet awakened and the first rays of sunlight were just beginning to filter through the panoramic windows. Vanessa Scott stood at the coffee machine, watching as the dark liquid slowly filled the glass pot. In the next room, she could hear the steady snoring of her husband, Samuel, who had closed the bar at 3 a.m. and was now resting up for the new day. Vanessa took a cup and walked over to the huge window overlooking San Diego Bay. The view was breathtaking, the water glistening in the sun, the white sails of yachts, the silhouette of the Coronado Bridge in the distance. It was for moments like this that she and Samuel had decided to rent this apartment 2 years ago, despite the sky-high rent of $4,500 a month. "Good morning, beautiful," came a sleepy voice from behind her. Samuel, wearing only boxer shorts and with his hair tousled, hugged his wife around the waist, burying his nose in her neck. "Coffee's ready," Vanessa smiled, turning to her husband. At 32, Samuel looked like a man who knew exactly what he wanted out of life. His bar, Midnight Co. on Fifth Avenue, had become one of the most popular establishments in the neighborhood in just 1 year, and Samuel himself had gained a reputation as a man with impeccable taste and business acumen. "Meeting with investors today," Samuel said, reaching for a second cup. "If everything goes according to plan, we'll open a second bar in Pacific Beach by the end of the year." Vanessa nodded, but her mind was preoccupied with her own projects. Printed photos lay on the kitchen table, part of her new project on San Diego's nightlife. For 3 months, she had been documenting the stories of people who work when the city sleeps. Taxi drivers, emergency room nurses, security guards, office cleaners. The editor-in-chief of the San Diego Tribune had expressed interest in the series, and several galleries had already inquired about the possibility of an exhibition. "Are you going to be out on the streets again tonight until morning?" Samuel asked, flipping through the photos. One of them showed a young nurse in a hospital corridor, her face worn with fatigue and compassion. "Until 2 at the latest. I want to photograph the dock workers. Their shift starts at 3 in the morning." Samuel shook his head with a smile. "Sometimes I think you know this city better than the police." And that wasn't far from the truth. In her 5 years as a photojournalist, Vanessa had traveled the length and breadth of San Diego. She knew where to get the best coffee at 4 in the morning, the truck outside Mercy Hospital, where the skateboarders gathered after midnight, the parking lot of the old shopping center, and which security guard in the business district wouldn't chase photographers away, but would instead help them find interesting angles. "By the way, my mom called late last night," Vanessa recalled, putting away her photos. "Something about a divorce. I didn't want to wake you up." Samuel frowned. Linda Harris, Vanessa's mother, was going through a painful divorce from her third husband, a successful plastic surgeon from Beverly Hills. According to Vanessa, her mother had invested not only her emotions in the marriage, but also a significant portion of her savings in their joint business. "Is she coping?" "It's hard to say. You know Mom, she always puts on a brave face. But things seem to be bad. She might come stay with us for a while." Samuel froze for a second with his cup at his lips. He had only met Linda a few times, at their wedding 2 years ago, and a couple of times when she came to San Diego. She had struck him as a strong but rather demanding woman. There was also a palpable tension between mother and daughter, which Vanessa preferred not to discuss. "Of course, if she needs help," he replied diplomatically. The next 2 hours passed in the usual rhythm. Samuel took a shower, dressed in his signature outfit, dark jeans, a white shirt, and a jacket without a tie, and drove to a bar to prepare for a meeting with potential investors. Vanessa checked her equipment, loaded a new memory card into her camera, and headed to the Tribune office to submit her material from the previous shoot. The newspaper's office was located in a modern building in downtown, and as Vanessa rode the elevator up to the 7th floor, she thought about her new project. After a series on night workers, she wanted to do something more personal, more profound. Perhaps stories of families who have lived in the same neighborhood for decades, and have seen the city change. Vanessa, right on time, greeted her editor-in-chief, John Morrison, a man in his 50s with perpetually tousled hair and coffee stains on his shirt. I have a proposal. Remember the murder case in Mira Mesa 3 months ago? The teenager who killed his neighbor? Vanessa nodded. The story had received widespread publicity. A 17-year-old boy had shot his neighbor after an argument over loud music. The trial is tomorrow. We need photos for an article on juvenile crime. Interested? Always, Vanessa replied. Court photography was one of her specialties. The ability to capture people's emotions at critical moments in their lives required not only technical skill, but also a special psychological intuition. The rest of the day was spent preparing for the evening shoot. Vanessa studied the public transportation routes that ran at night, made a list of locations in the port, and contacted people who could help her gain access to restricted areas. At 7 in the evening, she stopped by Midnight Company for a bite to eat before a long night of work. The bar was already full. Office workers had stopped by after work, and later a more bohemian crowd began to arrive. Artists, musicians, and actors from local theaters. Samuel was working behind the bar, demonstrating his signature cocktail-making technique. His movements were precise and measured. Every gesture had been practiced for years. Midnight Co. was famous not only for its signature drinks, but also for its special atmosphere. Samuel personally selected the music, monitored the lighting, and even chose the flowers for the tables. How did the meeting go? Vanessa asked, sitting down at the bar. Better than I expected, Samuel smiled, without looking up from the mojito he was preparing. They're willing to invest $500,000 in a new place, provided I find a suitable location by the end of the month. That's wonderful. Yes, but now the pressure is on. I need to find the perfect location, hire people, and come up with a concept. Pacific Beach has a completely different crowd. Vanessa ordered a salmon sandwich and watched her husband chat with the customers. Samuel had a rare gift. He could find a way to connect with anyone, whether they were a shy programmer or an eccentric artist. That was why his restaurant had become so popular so quickly. At 9 o'clock in the evening, Vanessa said goodbye to her husband and left for the photo shoot. San Diego at night was a completely different place. During the day, the business center was bustling with activity, but at night it became almost deserted, except for the occasional passerby and cleaning crews in the office buildings. She took her first shots at UC San Diego Hospital. A nurse named Maria, whom Vanessa had met a week earlier, agreed to show her what the night shift was like in the intensive care unit. The story was poignant. The tired faces of the medical staff, relatives waiting in the corridors, the silence of the hospital wards. Around midnight, Vanessa moved to the port. Here, a completely different life was in full swing. Huge container ships were unloaded around the clock, and dockers worked in 3 shifts. Men in hard hats and reflective vests moved multi-ton loads with the precision of surgeons. "First time in the port at night?" asked Juan, the foreman of one of the teams, noticing Vanessa with her camera. "Yes, I'm studying how the city lives when everyone is asleep." "We don't sleep," laughed the man. "We have a whole life here. Some have been working in the same place for 20 years, others are just starting out. Everyone has their own story." Vanessa spent until 3 in the morning at the port, documenting the work process. She captured powerful images, the strong silhouettes of people against the backdrop of huge cranes, the concentration on their faces when they had to move a particularly heavy container. She returned home as dawn was breaking over the city. Samuel was still asleep, and Vanessa quietly slipped into the bathroom so as not to wake him. The mirror reflected her tired but satisfied face. Today's shoot had provided material for several powerful articles. As she fell asleep next to her husband, Vanessa thought about how lucky they were. They both had jobs that brought them not only income, but also satisfaction. They had a beautiful apartment in the center of one of America's most attractive cities. Ahead lay plans to expand Samuel's business and new creative projects for her. Of course, not everything was perfect. Sometimes their work schedules prevented them from spending more time together. Sometimes Vanessa worried about financial stability. Photojournalism didn't offer a steady income, and Samuel was the main breadwinner. But overall, life was turning out just as they had dreamed when they first met 4 years ago in the same bar where Samuel was working at the time. Back then, he was just a bartender with ambitions, and she was a budding photographer trying to find her style. Now they had both achieved a certain level of success and were making plans for the future. The doorbell rang on Saturday morning while Vanessa and Samuel were still having breakfast and discussing their plans for the weekend. Standing at the door was Linda Harris with 2 huge suitcases and a box with the edges of photo frames peeking out. "I'm sorry, dear. I know I should have warned you." Linda looked impeccable despite the early hour and the long drive from Los Angeles. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, her makeup was flawless, and her suit was clearly from an expensive boutique. Only a careful observer could notice the slight shadows under her eyes and the barely noticeable tremor in her hands. "Mom, what happened?" Vanessa hugged her mother, smelling the familiar scent of expensive Chanel perfume. "Richard froze all our joint accounts. He filed for divorce through his lawyers without even warning me. I found out by accident when I went to the bank." Linda's voice trembled, but she quickly regained her composure. "I need time to find a good lawyer and sort out the paperwork." Samuel helped carry the suitcases into the guest room while Vanessa made tea. The apartment was quite spacious: 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a large living room with an open kitchen. The guest room was used as Vanessa's office, but could easily be converted into a living space if necessary. "You can stay as long as you need," Vanessa assured her, though deep down she felt uneasy. Her mother had always been a strong, independent woman, and seeing her in this state was unfamiliar. Over tea, Linda told her the details. Richard Stone, a renowned plastic surgeon from Beverly Hills, turned out to be not only an unfaithful husband, but also a shrewd businessman. Their joint cosmetology clinic, in which Linda had invested her savings from the sale of real estate, had been transferred to a shell company. Now she was left with no money, no home, and no business. "I should have seen the signs," Linda smiled bitterly. "To fall for such tricks at 52. "Don't blame yourself," Samuel poured her some tea. "Con artists are good at pretending." Linda looked closely at her brother-in-law. She hadn't gotten to know him very well during their rare meetings, but now she appreciated his tact and sincere concern. The next few days were spent trying to establish a new life for the 3 of them. Linda tried not to interfere with the couple, but her presence inevitably changed the atmosphere in the house. She woke up early, prepared elaborate breakfasts, and left the kitchen in perfect order. By evening, the apartment sparkled with cleanliness. The laundry was washed and perfectly ironed, and the refrigerator was filled with gourmet foods that Vanessa never bought. "Mom, you don't have to try so hard," Vanessa said, when she discovered that all her photos in the study had been neatly sorted into folders and labeled. "I can't just sit around," Linda replied. "Besides, this place is a complete mess. How can you work in such disorder?" It was true. Vanessa and Samuel were used to creative chaos. Books, cameras, and papers with notes were scattered around wherever they were needed at the moment. Linda, on the other hand, had turned the apartment into something resembling a home from an interior design magazine. The differences in their approaches to life were evident all the time. Linda didn't understand why Vanessa wandered around dangerous neighborhoods at night with her camera instead of photographing weddings and corporate events. Samuel seemed too relaxed to be a serious businessman. "At your age, I already had my own real estate agency," Linda remarked over dinner when the conversation turned to Samuel's plans to open a second bar. "Times have changed, Mom," Vanessa replied gently. "Things are different now." "The fundamentals of business don't change," Linda insisted. "You need a clear strategy, financial planning, and an understanding of the market. You can't rely on luck and talent." Samuel remained silent, but Vanessa could see his shoulders tense. He had worked in the restaurant business for 10 years before opening his own establishment and knew more about it than most theorists. A week later, Linda visited Midnight Company for the first time. Officially, it was to check on her son-in-law's business, but Vanessa suspected that her mother was simply tired of sitting at home. The bar impressed Linda. The stylish interior in dark colors, the professional bar counter, the high-quality music equipment, everything spoke of a serious approach to the business. Samuel introduced her to the staff and showed her how the kitchen worked, explaining the concept of the establishment. Not bad, Linda admitted after trying Samuel's signature cocktail. Although I would add more lighting in the corners and review the pricing policy, your cocktails are underpriced. We work for customer loyalty, Samuel explained. It's better to have regulars than chase one-time profits. Wise, Linda nodded. What are your attendance figures on weekdays? Samuel was surprised by her knowledge of the terminology, but willingly shared the statistics. It turned out that Linda knew quite a bit about the restaurant business. During her second marriage, she had helped her husband manage a chain of cafes. Vanessa watched their conversation with growing concern. Her mother was clearly in her element, and Samuel was talking about work with someone who understood business processes as well as he did for the first time in a long time. Over the next few days, Linda began to visit the bar regularly, first for lunch, then for an hour or two in the evening. She talked to the staff, studied the menu, and watched how things worked. Samuel didn't mind. Extra eyes and experience never hurt, especially before opening a second location. Your mother is a very smart woman, he said to Vanessa one evening. She has a great understanding of customer psychology. Yes, Mom has always been good at business, Vanessa agreed, but something in her husband's tone made her wary. Changes were also taking place at home. Linda was gradually settling in, turning the guest room into a full-fledged living space. There were new curtains, pillows, and paintings. She bought a better coffee machine and replaced most of the food in the refrigerator with organic products. I think Mom is going to stay for a long time, Vanessa confessed to Samuel when they were alone in the bedroom. Is that a problem? I don't know. On the one hand, she helps around the house, cooks, cleans. On the other hand, I feel like a guest in my own apartment. Samuel hugged his wife. It's hard for her right now. Give her time to get used to the new situation. But time passed, and the situation only became more complicated. Linda continued to reorganize her life according to her standards. She criticized Vanessa's diet, too much caffeine and not enough vegetables, her daily routine, how can you go to bed at 5 in the morning, and even her choice of clothing. That style was fashionable 10 years ago. Criticism of professional decisions was particularly painful. When Vanessa showed her mother photos from a night shoot at the port, Linda shook her head. Sure, technically the pictures aren't bad, but why waste time on people like that? You'd be better off focusing on more promising clients. This isn't a commercial shoot, Mom, it's journalism. Journalism has to make money. Otherwise, it's just an expensive hobby. These conversations were a regular occurrence. Linda didn't understand why anyone would want to document the lives of ordinary people when they could make money shooting celebrity weddings or corporate events. For her, photography was a business tool, not a way to tell stories. Linda felt more confident at the bar. She made friends with the waitresses, got to know the suppliers, and even offered some ideas for improving the service. Samuel appreciated her advice. She really understood how the hospitality industry worked. You could increase turnover by 30% just by changing the layout of the tables, she told Samuel, showing him a diagram she had drawn on a napkin. Interesting, but what about the atmosphere? I think comfort is more important than profit. Comfort and profit are not mutually exclusive, Linda smiled. On the contrary, the right layout makes a place more comfortable for guests. These conversations went on for hours. Samuel discovered that he could discuss aspects of the business with Linda that didn't particularly interest Vanessa. His wife supported his ambitions, but the details of financial planning and marketing strategies bored her. Linda, on the other hand, asked the right questions, understood business logic, and could assess prospects and risks. Gradually, Samuel began to turn to her for advice about the second bar. Pacific Beach is a completely different audience, Linda reasoned, studying the neighborhood statistics. There are more tourists, young people, and people with lower incomes. The concept needs to be appropriate. I was thinking of something more relaxed, maybe with an emphasis on craft beer. Not a bad idea, but you need to check out the competition. There are already several similar establishments in that area. Samuel nodded, taking notes. He usually only shared general plans with his wife, but here he could dive into the details without fear of boring her. Vanessa watched this bonding with growing concern. Her mother and husband were spending more and more time discussing business. Linda came to the bar almost every day, sometimes staying until closing time to help with administrative tasks. Maybe Mom should find a job of her own, Vanessa suggested cautiously. She helps me with planning, Samuel replied. Very valuable help, by the way. But she's looking for a job in her field, isn't she? She is, but so far without success. The divorce damaged her reputation in professional circles. Richard spread rumors about her incompetence. It was true. Linda had sent out resumes and gone to interviews, but no offers had come. Her age, the complicated situation with her previous job, and her high salary expectations made finding employment difficult. Meanwhile, her influence on the young couple's life grew. She rearranged the furniture in the living room for better lighting, replaced the bedding with higher quality linens, Egyptian cotton is better, for the skin, and insisted on installing a water filtration system. The tap water in California is terrible. Each change was reasonable, but together they created the feeling that the apartment was no longer Vanessa and Samuel's home, but Linda's. I understand that it's hard for Mom right now, Vanessa said to Samuel after a particularly tense evening when Linda criticized their habit of ordering takeout. But I feel like she's getting too involved in our lives. She's just trying to help, Samuel replied, and she's right about a lot of things. We are really disorganized. We loved it that way. Yes, but that doesn't mean there isn't room for improvement. Vanessa looked at her husband more closely. Did he really think their lifestyle needed a radical change? Or did he just not want to argue with his mother-in-law? By the end of the month, it was clear that Linda's temporary stay was becoming permanent. She set up a workspace in the guest room, made contacts with local real estate agencies, and even began researching opportunities for starting her own business in San Diego. Maybe I should try something new, she mused over dinner, like consulting for small businesses. I have enough experience. Samuel was intrigued. That's an interesting idea. There are a lot of startups in the city that need help with planning. Exactly. And I could specialize in the restaurant business. I have an understanding of the specifics, but Vanessa listened silently to their discussion of business plans. Just a month ago, Samuel had been having these conversations with her. Now, he was turning more and more to his mother, valuing her experience and professional knowledge. Gradually, a new order was established in the house, where Linda played the role of a full-fledged hostess rather than a temporary guest. And what worried Vanessa the most was that Samuel seemed to be happy with this. November brought cool evenings and the first rains to San Diego. Vanessa spent more and more time away from home, working on a new project for the San Diego Tribune. The editorial office had assigned her to document the lives of homeless people in the city center, a painful topic that required a delicate approach. I'll be late, she told Samuel on Wednesday morning as she gathered her cameras and lenses. I'm meeting with the shelter coordinator, then shooting until 11. Samuel nodded, not looking up from his laptop. On the screen was a spreadsheet with financial calculations for the second bar. Linda sat next to him, studying documents from real estate agents. This place in Pacific Beach looks promising, she said, pointing to the printout. Good foot traffic, close to the beach, reasonable rent. But it will require significant investment. Samuel objected. On the other hand, you'll get exactly the interior you want. Ready-made spaces rarely fit the concept. Vanessa kissed her husband on the cheek and headed for the door, feeling out of place in their business conversation. Such scenes were becoming more and more frequent. In the mornings, evenings, and on weekends, her mother and Samuel discussed business details with an enthusiasm that Vanessa had never seen in her husband's conversations about work. The Holy Hope Shelter was located in an old building near the train station. The coordinator, Maria Gonzalez, a woman in her 40s with tired but kind eyes, showed Vanessa around the premises, telling her stories about the people who lived there. Each of them was once someone's child, husband, father, Maria said as she showed Vanessa the sleeping quarters. Life can fall apart very quickly. Vanessa took photos carefully, with the permission of the shelter's residents. An elderly man named Robert agreed to tell his story, losing his job, divorce, depression, alcohol, the chain of events that led him to the streets. "The worst thing is the loneliness," he confessed. "When you realize that no one needs you anymore." Those words echoed in Vanessa's chest. In recent weeks, she had increasingly felt that way, useless in her own home, where her mother and husband were making plans without her. Returning home around midnight, she found Samuel and Linda in the living room. Floor plans, a calculator, and notebooks with calculations were spread out on the coffee table. Next to them was a half-empty bottle of red wine. "How was the shoot?" Samuel asked, his gaze slightly clouded by alcohol. "Tough, but productive," Vanessa replied, noticing how close her husband and mother were sitting. Linda leaned back on the sofa, relaxed and content, her hand resting on the armrest just inches from Samuel's. "We found the perfect place," Linda announced excitedly. "It's in Pacific Beach. Samuel is going to check it out tomorrow." "That's wonderful." Vanessa tried to sound sincere, but fatigue and growing irritation seeped into her voice. "Linda came up with a great concept," Samuel continued. "A cafe bar with an emphasis on healthy food and smoothies, perfect for the beach crowd." Vanessa nodded and said goodnight. In her bedroom, she lay awake for a long time, replaying the scene in her head. Something about the atmosphere, the way they sat, the way they looked at each other, made her uneasy. The next day, Samuel did go to look at the place, with Linda. "She knows better what to look for," he explained. Vanessa stayed home, editing photos from yesterday's shoot. They didn't return until evening, excited and satisfied. It turned out that they had not only looked at the space, but also met with a real estate agent, discussed the terms of the lease, and even visited an interior designer. "We've laid the foundation for a very promising project," Linda said over dinner. "Samuel, you really have a talent for this business." Vanessa listened to their enthusiastic stories, feeling like an outside observer. When was the last time she had seen her husband so animated? When was the last time he had shared his plans with her in such detail? On Friday, the situation repeated itself. Samuel and Linda went to meet with potential investors, while Vanessa headed to another photo shoot. The project about homeless people required time and patience. She had to gain people's trust and find stories worth telling. In the evening, she stopped by Midnight Co., hoping to spend some time with her husband. The bar was full, Samuel was working behind the bar, and Linda was sitting in the corner with a notebook, watching the staff and taking notes. "She's studying the operational processes," Samuel explained, handing Vanessa a glass of wine. "She wants to optimize the workflow." "Workflow?" Vanessa asked. "The sequence of actions performed by the staff." Vanessa watched as her mother timed the service at the tables, recorded the number of orders, and analyzed the workload at different times of the day. It was a professional approach, but something about the scene made her uncomfortable. "Don't you mind being monitored like that?" she asked cautiously. "On the contrary, it's very useful. Linda sees things that I don't notice because I'm used to them." On Saturday evening, Vanessa returned home after a long day of filming, tired and exhausted. She was greeted by the scent of expensive perfume and the sound of jazz coming from the living room. The scene she saw made her freeze. Samuel and Linda were sitting on the sofa very close to each other, leaning over a laptop. But it wasn't the position that caught her attention. It was the atmosphere, the dim lighting, the music, the bottle of champagne on the table. It all looked more like a romantic evening than a business meeting. Vanessa, just in time, Linda was the first to notice her daughter. "We're celebrating. Samuel got preliminary approval for a loan for the second bar. Congratulations," Vanessa said mechanically, but her eyes were fixed on her mother's hand resting on Samuel's shoulder. "It's mostly thanks to your mom." Samuel turned to Vanessa, but his gaze was not entirely on her. "She helped put together a business plan that impressed the bank." "We make a great team," Linda smiled, and there was something in that smile that made Vanessa's blood run cold. The following days brought even more warning signs. Samuel started staying at the bar until closing time, often in Linda's company. They called it working on the development strategy, but Vanessa noticed details that didn't fit into a business relationship. The glances they exchanged across the table, the way Linda touched Samuel's hand when handing him documents, the way he laughed at her jokes, too loudly, too long. One evening, Vanessa decided to drop by the bar unexpectedly. It was after 11, and the place was about to close. She climbed the stairs and looked through the window. The bar was empty except for Samuel and Linda. They were standing at the bar, very close to each other. Linda was saying something. Samuel was listening, leaning toward her. The distance between them was too small for a normal conversation. Vanessa moved away from the window, her heart pounding. What had she seen? A business conversation or something more? The line was thin, but her intuition told her that it had already been crossed. At home, she tried to talk to Samuel. "I think Mom spends too much time at the bar. She helps me. Without her support, I wouldn't be able to plan the second place. But she should have a life of her own." "She does. She's building a new career in business consulting." "Using your bar as a testing ground?" Samuel looked at his wife intently. "What do you mean?" Vanessa realized she had gone too far to stop. "I think you've become too close." "Close?" Samuel frowned. "She's my mother-in-law. Of course we're close." "That's not what I mean." There was a heavy pause. Samuel turned away to the window. "Are you jealous of your own mother?" "I'm worried about our marriage." "Our marriage is fine, Vanessa. The problem is that you work too much and don't spend enough time at home." These words hurt more than Vanessa had expected. Was she to blame for the problems in their relationship? On Sunday, the situation reached a critical point. Vanessa woke up late and found that Samuel had already left. A note in the kitchen said, "Went with Linda to look at furniture for the new bar. We'll be back in the evening." They spent the whole day together. Vanessa agonized at home, imagining them shopping, discussing designs, making plans, like a couple. In the evening, they returned with purchases and photographs. Linda was beaming with happiness, and Samuel was unusually animated. They showed Vanessa fabric samples and furniture catalogs and shared their impressions of the day. "We managed to find the perfect solution for the lounge area," Linda said. Samuel understood the concept right away. "We think alike," Samuel agreed. "It's rare to find such understanding." Vanessa looked at them and realized that something had changed irrevocably. A bond had formed between her husband and mother that went far beyond a business relationship or family closeness. That night, lying next to Samuel, she could feel him tossing and turning, unable to sleep. What was he thinking about? Business plans or the woman sleeping in the next room? At breakfast the next morning, Vanessa announced, "I have to go to a night shoot every day this week. It's a big project for the Tribune." "I see," Samuel replied, but there was no regret in his voice. "I'll be back very late," she added, watching his reaction. "Don't worry, we'll manage," said Linda. "I'll keep an eye on Samuel." There was something in those words that made Vanessa flinch. Not, "We'll manage without you," but, "I'll keep an eye on your husband." As if Samuel were a child who needed looking after, and Linda was the only person capable of providing that care. Vanessa left for the shoot with a heavy heart, knowing she was leaving her husband and mother alone for the whole day. And for the first time in her marriage, she wasn't sure she wanted to know what would happen in her absence. The homeless project required not only professional skills, but also emotional commitment. Every story was painful, every photograph a testament to human suffering. By the end of the day, Vanessa felt drained, but the work helped her take her mind off her problems at home. Returning home at midnight, she saw the lights on in the windows. When she went up to the apartment, she found Samuel and Linda in the same position as a week ago, sitting side by side on the sofa with documents and a laptop. But now the scene seemed less like a business meeting and more like something intimate. "How's it going?" she asked, trying to sound normal. "Great," Linda replied. "We finished the layout for the new bar. It turned out perfect." "Will you show us tomorrow?" Vanessa asked her husband. "Sure," Samuel replied, but his gaze lingered on Linda. "Actually, we have a meeting with the designer tomorrow." "We?" Vanessa asked. When did Samuel start saying "we" to mean himself and her mother? That night, she lay awake listening to Samuel breathing beside her. Was she losing her husband? And if so, how could she stop it? Wednesday, November 15th. Vanessa received a message from the shelter coordinator at 5:30. "Sorry, I have to reschedule the meeting for tomorrow. It's an emergency." Instead of feeling annoyed, she felt relieved. Finally, she could spend the evening with her husband, talk alone. They had hardly seen each other without Linda around in the last few weeks. Midnight Co. wasn't open yet. Vanessa quietly opened the door with her key and went inside. The bar was dimly lit, and intimate jazz music was playing. On the bar were a bottle of expensive French wine and 2 glasses. Samuel and Linda's voices could be heard coming from the back room. "I can't pretend anymore," Samuel said. "I know. It's hard for me, too," Linda replied. Vanessa froze, her heart pounding. "Does Vanessa suspect anything?" "She does. She asked some strange questions yesterday." "What should we do?" "I don't know, but I can't live in the same house with her, feeling the way I feel about you." The world spun. Vanessa cautiously peeked through the slightly open door of the study. Samuel and Linda were standing in each other's arms. His arms were around her waist, her hands were on his chest. They looked into each other's eyes with the tenderness of lovers. "We can't hide this anymore," Linda whispered. "I know, but how can we tell Vanessa?" "We'll find a way. The important thing is that we found each other." They kissed, long and passionately. Vanessa recoiled, gasping for air. All her suspicions took on a terrifying meaning. Her husband, her mother, together. She turned toward the exit but tripped over a chair. A crash echoed through the bar. "What's going on?" Samuel's voice rang out. Footsteps approached. Samuel appeared in the doorway and froze when he saw his wife. His face turned pale with horror. "Vanessa, I can explain." Linda appeared behind him, disheveled, her lipstick smeared. "Explain what?" Vanessa's voice sounded distant. "How could you sleep with my mother?" "It's not what you think." "Not what I think." Vanessa laughed hysterically. "I saw you. I heard every word." "Honey, we didn't want you to find out this way," Linda began. "You didn't want me to find out at all." Vanessa turned to her mother. "How could you? He's my husband." "I didn't plan it." "We developed feelings for each other," Samuel interjected. "Feelings? For your wife's mother? That's disgusting." "Let's talk calmly." Linda held out her hand. "Don't you dare touch me." They stood in a triangle of broken trust. "How long has this been going on?" Vanessa asked quietly. Samuel and Linda exchanged glances. "Answer me." "A few weeks," Samuel admitted. "At first we just got close. Then we realized we felt more than that." A few weeks. Vanessa realized the magnitude of the betrayal. You laughed at me. All this time. We didn't want to hurt you, Linda said. You didn't want to? You destroyed my family. We'll find a solution, Samuel tried to calm her down. We're all adults. A solution? I'll leave, and you'll live in my apartment? Samuel was silent. I see, I understand. Vanessa headed for the door, but Samuel grabbed her arm. Where are you going? Let go of me. We need to talk about this. Let go. She broke free and stopped at the doorway. Something prevented her from leaving. Something prevented her from leaving them together. Vanessa turned around. Samuel and Linda were standing next to each other, and even now there was a connection between them. We were married for 2 years. I thought we were happy. We were happy, Samuel replied. But my mother showed up, and you realized she was better for you. She understands me, Samuel said quietly. My ambitions, my plans. With her, I feel like a real man, and with me, you felt like what? Samuel was silent. So it's all my fault. I'm a bad wife. I worked too much. That's not true. Then why did you choose her? Samuel didn't answer. Because she's better than me in every way, said Vanessa. She's prettier, smarter, more experienced. Honey, don't say that, Linda interrupted. What am I supposed to say? My own mother stole my husband. Nobody stole anybody. Shut up! You ruined my life! Vanessa ran out into the street, choking with sobs. Her first impulse was to drive away, far away, but they would stay together in her house. She turned around and went back. The door was open. Samuel and Linda were talking quietly, holding hands. I need to get my things, Vanessa said. They watched her go to the stairs. Upstairs, Samuel kept his documents and some personal belongings. Vanessa went upstairs, gathering her cameras and putting them in her bag. The conversation continued downstairs. We did the right thing by telling her the truth. Now we don't have to hide anymore, she heard her mother say. I'm afraid she won't survive this, Samuel replied. She will. Vanessa is strong, and we deserve happiness. Deserve happiness on the ruins of her life. Vanessa stopped on the stairs. She saw the bar counter, the place where they had met, where Samuel had proposed to her. On the counter lay a lemon knife, long and sharp. It's Vanessa's own fault, Linda continued. If she had paid more attention to her family instead of her work. Something clicked in her head. It was her fault. Of course. Her hand reached for the knife. Samuel stood with his back to the bar, hugging Linda. They didn't notice her approaching. So it's my fault, Vanessa said quietly. They turned around. Samuel saw the knife and stepped back. Vanessa, what are you doing? What I should have done a long time ago. Put the knife down. Let's talk. About what? About how I'm getting in everyone's way? No one said that. Don't lie! I heard you. You want me to disappear. Honey, calm down. Linda tried to approach her. Don't come near me. You're a traitor. Vanessa, please. Samuel held out his hands. Give me the knife. We'll work this out peacefully. Peacefully? You're going to divorce me and marry my mother? We didn't plan it. Stop lying! Vanessa lunged at Samuel. It all happened in an instant. The knife entered his chest with a soft thud. Samuel looked at his wife in surprise, not understanding what was happening. His gaze fell on the handle sticking out of his chest. Vanessa, he whispered, blood appearing on his lips. He slowly sank to the floor. Blood seeped between his fingers, spreading across his shirt. Linda screamed piercingly. Vanessa stood over her husband, watching the life drain from his body. Her anger evaporated, leaving only emptiness and horror at what had happened. What have I done? She whispered. Samuel tried to say something, but only blood came out of his mouth. His eyes dimmed and his breathing became labored. Call an ambulance! We need to call an ambulance! Linda screamed, shaking her phone, but it was too late. Samuel took his last breath and went still. Vanessa fell to her knees next to the body. Reality hit her with full force. She had killed the man she loved more than anything. "What have you done?" Linda sobbed. "What have you done?" The police arrived 17 minutes later. Patrol officers Johnson and Martinez found two women, one sobbing over the body, the other in shock. Detective Mike Rodriguez from the Homicide Division arrived shortly after. A 45-year-old man with a tired face and attentive eyes. He had been working in the Homicide Division for 20 years. "What do we have?" he asked the patrol officer. "A domestic homicide. The victim is Samuel Scott, 32, the owner of the establishment. His wife found him with a knife in his chest. The witness is his mother-in-law." Rodriguez examined the scene. The knife was sticking out of the victim's chest. There was blood on the floor, but no signs of a struggle. "Where's the wife?" "She's sitting in the corner. She's in shock." Vanessa sat on a chair, staring into space. Her hands and clothes were covered in blood. "Mrs. Scott, I'm Detective Rodriguez. Can we talk?" Vanessa slowly raised her eyes. "I killed him," she whispered. "You have the right to remain silent." Captain Tom Brown, head of the Homicide Division, arrived. "Mike, what do we have?" "Domestic homicide. A wife stabbed her husband to death. There's a witness." "Motive?" "Not clear yet. We need to question the witness." Linda sat in the ambulance, pale but conscious. "Mrs. Harris, Detective Rodriguez, what happened?" "Vanessa killed Samuel. She just took a knife and killed him." "Why?" Pause. Linda understood the importance of the answer. She was furious. She thought there was something going on between us. "And was there?" "No, of course not. We were working on business plans, but Vanessa was jealous, making up problems." Rodriguez took notes, noting inconsistencies in the witness's behavior. The crime scene was cordoned off and evidence collection began. Photographers documented every inch. Experts searched for fingerprints. Vanessa was arrested. She did not resist, silently allowing the handcuffs to be put on her. In the police car, she looked out the window at the streets of San Diego. The city that she and Samuel had loved now seemed foreign. Detective Rodriguez followed behind, thinking over the details. Something about the witness's testimony was troubling. The woman had been too quick to deny her relationship with her brother-in-law. A long investigation lay ahead to uncover the true motives for the murder and the role of all those involved in the tragedy. The interrogation room at the San Diego Police Department was small and featureless. Gray walls, a metal table, 2 chairs, and a camera in the corner near the ceiling. Detective Rodriguez sat across from Vanessa Scott, studying her behavior. 12 hours after her arrest, the woman looked as if she had aged several years. Her eyes were red from crying, her hands were shaking, and her voice was hoarse. "Tell me again what happened last night," Rodriguez asked, turning on the tape recorder. Vanessa slowly looked up. "I killed Samuel. That's all you need to know." "I need to know much more. Why did you do it?" A long pause. Vanessa stared at her hands folded on the table. "I realized I had lost him forever." "Lost him how?" "He fell in love with another woman." "Your mother?" Vanessa flinched as if she had been struck. "Yes. Your mother claims there was no relationship between her and your husband, that you made it all up." "She's lying." Vanessa's voice grew firmer. "I saw them together. I heard them talking." "What exactly did you see and hear?" Vanessa told the detective about the conversation she overheard, about the kiss, about how Samuel and Linda discussed how to tell her the truth. Rodriguez carefully wrote down every detail. "After you caught them, what happened?" "They didn't deny it. Samuel said that they had feelings for each other, that Mom understood him better than I did." "And then you grabbed the knife?" "Not right away. At first I tried to leave. But then I heard Mom say that they deserved to be happy. that it was all my fault because I didn't pay enough attention to the family. Rodriguez put down his pen. Vanessa, I understand that you're in pain, but murder doesn't solve anything. I know. Tears streamed down her cheeks. I didn't want to kill him. I just couldn't bear the thought of them being together. While Rodriguez questioned Vanessa, his partner, Detective Sarah Thompson, worked on the physical evidence. Forensic analysis confirmed that the fingerprints on the knife belonged solely to Vanessa. There were no signs of a struggle. The scene looked exactly as the suspect had described it, an impulsive murder in the heat of the moment. But some details didn't add up. The bottle of expensive wine, the 2 glasses, the intimate atmosphere in the bar. Were business partners really having romantic encounters? Thompson decided to talk to Linda Harris again. Mrs. Harris, let's clarify a few things. You claim that you were discussing business plans with Mr. Scott last night? Linda sat in the visitor's chair, looking tired but composed. Yes, we were working on a concept for a new restaurant. You chose a rather romantic setting for a business meeting. Expensive wine, dim lighting, jazz music. Samuel wanted to relax after a hard day. We had been working hard. Mrs. Harris, your daughter claims she overheard your conversation with Mr. Scott. She said you were discussing your feelings for each other. Linda tensed. Vanessa misunderstood. We were talking about our working relationship. She also saw you kissing. It was a thank you. I thanked him for his help. Thompson made a note. Linda's testimony was looking less and less convincing. Mrs. Harris, how long have you been living in your daughter's apartment? About 2 months. During that time, did you develop a close relationship with your son-in-law? We became good friends. Samuel is a wonderful man, a talented entrepreneur. Just friends? Linda hesitated too long. Yes, just friends. After the interview, Thompson met with Rodriguez in his office. What do you think? He asked. Linda Harris is lying. Her story doesn't match her daughter's testimony or the crime scene. So there really was an affair between her and the victim? It looks like it. The question is how important that is to the case. Rodriguez thought for a moment. Very important. It changes the motive. Vanessa didn't kill out of baseless jealousy, but because of real betrayal. What do you suggest? We need to find evidence of the affair. Check phone calls, text messages, witness statements. Over the next 2 days, the detectives painstakingly gathered information. Analysis of phone records showed that Samuel and Linda exchanged messages much more frequently than a business relationship would require. Some of the messages were clearly intimate in nature. Bar staff confirmed that Linda had been spending a lot of time at the bar in recent weeks, often staying until closing time. Waitress Maria Gonzalez admitted that she had seen them holding hands when they thought no one was around. They acted like a couple, Maria said. It was clear that there was something going on between them. Bartender Jake Miller told a similar story. The last month, the boss was on cloud 9. He was smiling and humming all the time. And when Mrs. Harris left, he became sad. The evidence painted a clear picture. Samuel Scott and Linda Harris were indeed in a romantic relationship, carefully hiding it from Vanessa. Rodriguez called Linda in for further questioning. Mrs. Harris, we've analyzed your text messages with Mr. Scott. Would you like to comment? He placed the printouts in front of her. Messages from last week. Samuel, can't wait to be alone with you. Linda, me too. I hate pretending in front of Vanessa. Samuel, things will change soon. I promise. Linda turned pale as she read the messages. Do you have anything to say? Rodriguez asked. There was a long silence. Finally, Linda lowered her head. Okay. Yes, there was something between us. What exactly? We fell in love. We didn't plan it. It just happened. How long did your relationship last? About a month. Maybe a little longer. Did your daughter know about it? She suspected. In the last few weeks, she started asking strange questions, watching us. Why did you lie in your initial statement? Linda raised her tear-stained eyes. I didn't want to make the situation worse. Vanessa already killed someone because of our relationship. Why traumatize her even more? Or were you just trying to hide your role in what happened? I didn't make Vanessa kill Samuel, but your actions led to tragedy. Linda began to cry. I know. I lost both my daughter and the man I loved. This punishment is worse than prison. With Linda's new testimony, the picture of what happened became complete. Rodriguez returned to Vanessa for a final interrogation. Vanessa, your mother has confessed to her relationship with Samuel. She has confirmed your version of events. Vanessa nodded without looking up. I knew she was lying. Mom has always been a good actress. Tell me how you felt when you found out about their affair. Betrayal. Absolute betrayal. Vanessa's voice trembled. Samuel was my husband. My mother was the closest person to me. They both deceived me. Did you plan to kill Samuel? No. When I picked up the knife, I wasn't thinking. I just wanted the pain to stop. Do you regret what you did? Vanessa looked up, her eyes filled with tears. Every second. I killed the man I loved. For what? For choosing someone else? Rodriguez put down his pen. The case was closed. All the evidence had been gathered, the motive established, and guilt proven. The next day, Vanessa Scott was formally charged with second-degree murder. Given the circumstances of the case, her husband's infidelity, her state of mind, and the lack of premeditation, the prosecutor agreed to a plea bargain in exchange for a reduced sentence. Linda Harris was not charged with any crime, but her testimony was a key part of the case. She left San Diego the day after her daughter's arrest, leaving no address. Captain Brown summed up the case at the department's daily briefing. A classic family tragedy: infidelity, jealousy, impulsive murder. Rodriguez and Thompson did a good job establishing the true motives. What will happen to the killer? Thompson asked. Probably 10 to 15 years. It could have been worse, given the circumstances. A week later, Vanessa Scott appeared in court. She was pale and thin, and the prison uniform made her look much older than her 28 years. The judge read the charges. Vanessa Scott, you are charged with second-degree murder. How do you plead? Guilty, Vanessa replied quietly. The lawyer read out the mitigating circumstances: no criminal record, good behavior, emotional stress due to her husband's infidelity. The prosecutor insisted on a fair punishment. Vanessa Scott committed a crime by taking the life of an innocent person. No personal circumstances justify murder. The judge announced a recess to deliver the verdict. Vanessa sat alone in the courtroom. Linda was not there. Her friends had turned their backs on her after her arrest. Only her court-appointed lawyer tried to support his client. Whatever the judge decides, remember that life does not end, he said. Vanessa shook her head. My life ended the moment I picked up the knife. The judge returned and read the sentence. Taking into account all the circumstances of the case, the court sentences Vanessa Scott to 12 years imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 8 years. Vanessa accepted the sentence without emotion. Detective Rodriguez watched from the gallery, feeling a strange mixture of satisfaction and regret. Justice had been served, but the tragedy had already been committed. After the hearing, he met with Captain Brown. Tough case, the captain remarked. Yes, everyone lost. The victim, the killer, and the witness. That's the nature of family crimes. They destroy everyone involved. Rodriguez nodded, putting the case file away in the archive. The story of Vanessa Scott became another sad page in the chronicles of human passions, which sometimes lead to irreversible tragedies.